Yes, they're attached to the paper agendas, if people grab those.
Okay, we'll call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on April 12th, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Draycott. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have one delegation this evening. Lynn Bariza and Tara Pettinger from the Hospital Foundation are going to present to council this evening. So welcome to council, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for having us and allowing us to come and present today. I'm Tara Pettinger, the Executive Director for the Portage District General Hospital Foundation, and joining me today is Lynn Bariza, one of our board members. So I think you have the presentation in front of you there. So what we're here to talk about tonight is our proposal and a little bit of background information about where things are at with a regional health center proposal for Portage la Prairie. As we know it now, it's referred to as our hospital, and I'll talk to it in the present as PDGH. However, moving forward, what exists now in these regional health centers in Bethesda and Steinbach and Boundary Trails. So that's kind of how we'll reference them. So it should be really easy to follow along here. There's not a lot of points on the slides. With the regional health background, just wanted to point out we are one of 3 of the regional health centers in Southern Health Santé Sud, and we serve the city and rural municipality of Portage la Prairie, 5 rural municipalities including Alonza, Westlake, Gladstone, North Norfolk, Cartier, and Gray, and 4 First Nations communities, Long Plain, Sandy Bay, Dakota Teepee, and Dakota Plains. So PDGH was noted in the 2019 Community Health Assessment to have one of the highest use and hospitalization rates in Southern Health. So that just kind of shows the health of our region, and that we've got some really unique needs that require some really unique needs in our healthcare facility. So on the next slide, some more background is just PDGH was originally constructed in 1956 and has numerous additions and renovations that have been completed over the last 65 years. So lots of different areas are seeing different age and deficiencies and things like that as we move forward. It's an 88-bed facility which provides a wide variety of acute services, and the emergency department at PDGH has continued to see the highest volume of visits year over year in our region. It's the only acute care facility in the northern area of Southern Health Santé Sud. So you can see the magnitude of the area we serve and the types of needs that we have again there. So our process to date, as how we've kind of got to this point, is back in March 2019, our foundation sat down and requested a meeting with Southern Health Santé Sud to talk about something that I think has been on the table for years and years and years, and looking at a new healthcare facility for Portage la Prairie. So we started to discuss the status of the existing hospital, as well as the viability of building a new facility in our community. In April 2019, Southern Health Santé Sud agreed to engage an architectural firm to complete an assessment of the hospital, and significant building and functional deficiencies within the existing hospital were identified. Definitely not to our surprise. So the majority of the spaces are in fair to poor condition, with 50 to 75% of the existing infrastructure beyond reasonable recommendation to renovate to current standards. There's ongoing issues with the building function and maintenance, with frequent repairs needed, causing interruption to patient care, which is certainly not ideal. And the estimated cost for correcting the deficiencies and increasing the size to what would be needed and meet standards was $205 million. So that's where that process went. And then following that architectural study, the foundation took that and met, and we hired a consultant to complete a new health center proposal for us to allow us to move forward. That comprehensive report was completed with the recommendation of a new facility. As you'll see when we discuss numbers, you'll see that comparison that I talked about in renovation, comparative to having a new facility in our community. So to this report, as it was moved forward, we were able to include letters of support from both the city and RM of Portage la Prairie, RMs of Headingley, Alonza, North Norfolk, St. Francis Xavier, our school division, Dakota TP, our medical clinic, the Chamber of Commerce, McCain Foods, and Central Plains Cancer Care also included a letter of support with a commitment for a financial contribution. So the PDGH Foundation Board presented to Southern Health Board once we had this proposal complete, looking for kind of their endorsement and their willingness to move it forward. At that presentation, we had representatives from the City of Portage la Prairie Council as well as the RM Council. We presented that, and Southern Health then moved it forward to Shared Health. Shared Health then accepted it and moved it forward to Manitoba Health. So that is the process as to where we have moved to date with that movement of our proposal. And now I'm going to just turn it over to Lynn to talk a little bit about the estimated costs.
Okay, thanks, Tara. There we go. All right, so total construction costs, well, total costs, the bottom line estimate for this facility is $282 million and change. So in order of magnitude, of course, construction is the biggest bulk of that, $220 million. Furniture, equipment, and internet communication technology, $25 million. Consultant fees, miscellaneous costs, land and servicing, and then financing. So the bottom line is about $1,066 a square foot.
Sorry, Lynn, could you just speak into the mic a little bit more?
You bet.
A few of the older people at this end can't quite hear.
Better? Okay. So, yeah, well, as you can see from this slide, the total cost was $282 million. And so if you turn to the next slide, in terms of how to pay for that, so historically, Manitoba Health has contributed 90% of capital costs. They have usually requested, or oftentimes requested, the community contribution be in the area of 10%. However, there has at times been a cap of that at that of $6 million. So there's a big difference there, obviously, between 10% and $6 million. We have been told by the RHA that they believe this cap to be in place, that it would be that was what would be required for this project, but we just haven't had any conversations with Manitoba Health to date, so we're just not sure in terms of being a post or not post-pandemic environment, a pandemic environment, whether the expectations for a community contribution would be any different from that $6 million. So this is the estimate we have now, that the $6 million would be required from the community, which of course would encompass municipal contributions, hospital foundation contributions, community fundraising, other organizations and groups. So that would be a total, but again, that's just a starting point. And so if you turn to the second last slide, I guess what we just want to really get across this evening is that we do have reason to believe that this project is fairly imminent. We believe it's near the top of the list in terms of provincial facilities that are going to be built sooner rather than later. We don't know if we're number one, but we do know we're very close to the top. And so going forward, we believe as a foundation the time has come to form a partnership with the city and the arm of Portage la Prairie and other partners to advance the project, to move it forward. So of course that would include also engaging other municipalities who are in the region, First Nations, other groups who want to be involved, citizens, everyone who's served by this facility. And I guess the bottom line is we feel a united, coordinated effort is what's needed to move it forward. And I'll just give Tara the last word.
I guess I'm a little taller. So just in closing, I think that we just want to leave you with the idea that this is clearly a priority in our community. We regularly, I haven't had an opportunity to be in the hospital as recently. However, it is a regular occurrence that people are coming in and talking about, when is this going to happen? There is constantly, with the director at the hospital, I was just in a meeting this morning, pipes burst again this weekend in our OR. and those things ultimately impact patient care. And that just can't happen anymore. I think we're at a point where this has been a conversation on the table for a really long time in our community, and we just can't do it anymore. With being so bold, this really isn't an option anymore. And that's why, as the foundation, we're ready to step up and do our part, but we certainly recognize that we cannot do this alone. We require the support of you, the city. We require our RM, who we will speak to tomorrow, and then we require the support of the rest in the region as we move forward. So we thank you guys for taking time to hear us out tonight, and we really hope that we can count on your support as we continue to move forward and push this forward and make it a huge priority.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to open it up. I know there will be questions from council on the presentation. And first question goes to Councillor Wall.
Thank you, Tara and Lynn. I was just wondering, you said we currently have 88 beds. Is there a plan to expand the number of beds?
There was talk in the first study about moving it from 88 beds to 114. There's been a little bit of a shift with the whole shared health and that plan moving forward. They're trying to do a lot more outpatient surgeries and things like that. So a little bit of that is going to be dictated by that plan moving forward. But in our original plan, it was based on 118, or 114. So definitely bumping up bed numbers.
And was there a plan to add to the number of operating rooms?
Yeah, I believe that, because that's one of the huge deficiencies for sure. There's a huge chunk of, I was leafing through them again today, pages and pages of deficiencies, and one is definitely our OR. And ENT is a huge part of what goes on in Portage, and slating times and things like that are in high need. So yeah, the OR is definitely something that is way behind standard and code for sure.
Thank you very much. It's very exciting.
Councillor Buds?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Councillor Wall's excitement. This is fantastic news. Long time waiting here in Portage, and many individuals lobbying for this improvement in our community, so in our region. So can't wait. Hopefully we are number one on that list. Just a quick comment on the $6 million. I don't think this community and this council, we're going to have to understand that we have to do our part. The $6 million, can you enlighten us a little bit in terms of what all stakeholders would be contributing to that amount? Are you looking for the municipalities in general to raise this? Is it the community at large to raise this? Some comments on that.
It's a little early to say, actually. That's why we're opening the discussion with you this evening and with the RM tomorrow morning. We're not there yet. So, and we don't, we're not even sure that the 6 million is a firm number. That's just what it's been in the past. That's what the RHA has indicated will likely be expected if this comes to pass, but we just don't know. That's where the discussion begins, in all honesty.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, ladies, for coming this evening and sharing this information with us. It is very exciting. I do know that a lot of patients that live in the region of Portage la Prairie do have to go outside of our region in order to receive medical, to go to other communities, to other facilities. Is this number that we're looking at tonight looking at replacing our hospital pretty much status quo to what we have, or does it take into consideration adding any services to our community?
I'll talk a little bit that health plan again, which we aren't privy to see and haven't seen to this point, but there has been some conversations with it about creating some centers of excellence. So right now, for lots of ortho stuff, if you get a hip replacement or a knee, you go to Boundary. For ENT, you're typically coming here. So there's been some conversations within that plan about having some elements of centers of excellence at different regional health centers. However, I think this number reflects where we're at, but also allows us probably to do a little bit more. So if you've ever been to the dialysis unit, it's not huge, and we've just added another shift of dialysis. And that's something that's a huge need in our community. Therefore, something like that would hopefully allow, obviously, more space, getting it up to code and things like that, that would definitely help with people having to leave the community. That's just one example, but.
And Councillor Meyer, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and Tara and Lynn, thank you guys very much for coming here tonight, and of course to your organization and the board, and that to get it this far, I think is exciting, and I echo, of course, the rest of the councillors' comments. In addition, most of the questions that I had have already been asked. The only really, I guess, is just if you can maybe just expand on the timeline for me a little bit. I know it's premature, but there's obviously some concrete steps going forward, and you alluded to some of them. But if you can maybe just run through it, what's the next steps that would take place in this?
Are you meaning timeline for
Like
seeing
where-
a new facility or just where we're going
Where
now?
do we go from today?
Yeah, where we go from today, I think, is once we can gain some more support, gain some more momentum, gain some energy in our community, then we'll be ready. We want to be able to have meetings with ministers and have those conversations about what's going on in our community, the deficiencies that our hospital is facing, and the need for it here, and the excitement that we have in the community, and our preparedness to back this project. So we need to get that point across to the decision makers, but we didn't feel as the foundation we were loud enough to do that. So that's our hope here, hopefully moving fairly quickly, is that we can get some more backing, and then we can reach out and have some of those meetings and get this moving.
Perfect, thank you. Just a quick follow-up with that, is that, so from here going forward, really, this is kind of your first step on the railway track and then next is the RM, and then,
Yeah, I was just going to add to that what Tara spoke about, and also, again, meeting with other municipalities in the region. I mean, that would be something, a step that would have to be taken next, meeting with First Nations, setting up meetings with other groups, and again, talking to the citizens, and just getting the word out there that this is a community project. And even though it's something that, I mean, no one's talking about shovels in ground yet or anything like that. The discussions do need to start sooner rather than later. So getting as many people involved as possible at this point is what we're aiming for.
excellent. Well, good on you guys, it certainly is a great way to start, so, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Other questions from council? Well, again, thanks very much for taking time of your evening to come and present. And I want to thank the foundation for getting the building assessment done and then hiring the consultant to complete the new proposal. I think those two items have really driven this to the forefront, not only in the community, but also really put it on the table for the province. So I think I speak on behalf of all council, and I say that we are absolutely behind this proposal. And tomorrow, after the RM has completed their council meeting and seen the presentation, I will be reaching out to the Reeve, and we'll definitely do whatever we can to move this forward. So again, thank you very much. This is absolutely exciting news for Portage la Prairie. Thank you. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for the 2021 financial plan and tax levy bylaw. This is 21-8720. This is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for opening the hearing. As we did last public hearing on our financial plan, I will be presenting a short presentation, then we'll open up for questions, and then we will move into the formalities of the approval. So with that, I just encourage council and those viewing to open up that PDF that has the financial plan information. I'll just be scrolling through it. So basically starting on page 2, your taxes at a glance. Just as a reminder, as I've mentioned in the past, there are no property tax increases scheduled from the city and the city of Portage la Prairie. There is changes for the Manitoba government's education tax rebate, and that will increase school taxes. And there's no general assessment value changes to property in 2021. Just an asterisk there that this does obviously exclude any new construction and property enhancement. So that was a move made by the provincial government in view of the pandemic that we're currently all dealing with. So just some news on this Manitoba government education tax rebate. So residential and farm property owners will receive a 25% rebate of their 2021 gross education taxes. And all other property owners included, including commercial, will receive 10% rebate on those gross education taxes. And those receiving the education tax credit will see the $700 maximum reduced to $525, resulting in an increase in their total 2021 taxes due. So it kind of seems a bit confusing that we just say that taxes are not going up, but it is definitely as it relates to the education tax rebate. And the rebate is not something that individuals are going to be receiving at the same time as their tax bill. So it is the combination of those two items that you'll be receiving in your mailbox that net out the reduction. So 2021 property taxes, just an overview of kind of what your property taxes pay for. And we can see on this page 4 of 27, a residential property assessed at $250,000 will pay just over $2,000 in taxes. And those are the things that most of those dollars go towards. And you can see, I'm not going to go through them all, but policing and enforcement does run a very significant number here in our city. So how will the city fund its 2021 expenses? So the City of Portage has been able to maintain 2021 property taxes at no increase by funding increased expenses through our expanding tax base. And so we talk a lot in this city about, over the last number of years, is increasing our assessment and garnering more revenue off of investments that we are making, the public is making, private industry is making, and the province is making. So that is happening. 2021 capital projects will be funded from reserves, which is essentially the city's savings accounts, government grants, and some debt financing. If I had to sum up what 2021 and quite frankly beyond is going to look like, and it is going to be multiple years of construction. We do have obviously the Island Park Causeway that's underway. We have just some images there of downtown sidewalk renewal. We talk at great length of the water pollution control facility and water treatment plant infrastructure upgrades. And then of course our recently announced major infrastructure project for Saskatchewan Avenue West. So what to expect, as mentioned, 41 million. I did mention most of these, and includes our street paving, building expansions at our operations yards, and our recently ordered fire truck. So on page 827, the infrastructure growth, a 5-year review, you can see kind of what's happened. Very significant growth as we enter 2019 and hopefully beyond. So it's just been really good news for us here. And then, as I mentioned, some of the major projects that will be looked upon for construction here, totaling $9.5 million. And that is considered what our general fund is. And then flipping over to our utility fund, $31 million, making up just over that $40 million in infrastructure projects. So going to be a very, very busy couple of years here in our region. And where does this revenue come from? On 11 of 27, we have several line items here that kind of highlight where those funds come from. So obviously property taxes is the largest driver, government grants, and then several other areas of revenue. So we've just represented that same amount of information graphically for people to review. And then flipping over to the expense side of things, several line items outlining all of the expenses. And I mentioned earlier that we have protective services leading the way, and then lots of different expenditures that the city does see on an annual basis. And again, just graphically on page 14. So on the utility revenue side, this is water sales, customer sales. You can see them there. And $13,538,000. That includes government grants, transfer from surpluses, et cetera, et cetera. Graphical representation once again. And expenses. And you can see on both of these, our revenue matches our expenses, and therefore no increase in taxes. And you can see that there's just a considerable amount of money, again, spent on the utility side of things. Graphically again on 18. I think it's always important to highlight the role of the city when it comes to partnering with our community. We did complete a list of community grants and related party funding, and it is available on our city website. And this funding was announced with my budget speech back in January of 2021. I would be remiss, and I know council would definitely agree with me, that if we did not take an opportunity to recognize a significant contribution of all of our employees, especially given the year that we've just had and continue to have. Our employee group is the core strength of the city. Without their dedication, our programs and services simply would not happen. On behalf of council, we appreciate the opportunity to serve our community, and the city of Portage la Prairie has 140 full and part-time employees, and our annual payroll exceeds $7 million. So we know those staff and employees are definitely contributing to our economy. There is lots of talk about what a mill rate is, and a mill is a 1/1000th part, and 1 mill represents $1 of taxes for every $1,000 of proportionate assessment. And so, you know, what's happening with our mill rate, and the mill rates have remained the same or were reduced for 2021. And you can see for property, it remains the same as 2021, and then there's that reduction as planned by the province. You can see the chart there on the difference between 2021 and 2020. I'm quite proud of this next slide, 23 of 27. It does show our 20-year historical mill rates, and this council and the council before felt it was very important for us to continue to look at that mill rate as it compared to some of our peer communities, and with an intent to start bringing it down and managing our growth as much as we could by investing in ourselves and presenting an opportunity for growth. And we've seen that success over the last number of years, and you can see, as the mayor has mentioned on several occasions, the trend is your friend, and we do see it trending downwards. So just to highlight the impact on taxes, so you can see here that in 2021, $3,096 versus 2020 of $2,943. And again, it is related to that tax credit. You can see that the property tax assessment remains unchanged, and it is school division, province of Manitoba related in terms of changes. And as always, if someone wanted to determine what their property taxes were, we have the step one would be to look at the assessed value of your property, and we have that link on our website. You can compare it to your 2020 property tax bill, and of course, we will have our tax impact calculator on our website. It's always prudent to take a look at our debt. The city's debt plan is included with our 10-year capital plan, and our general fund debt will be $6.5 million by December 31st, 2021, and that does include funding for the Crescent Lake Causeway project, and our utility fund debt, $6 million by the end of the year as well, and the new funding for Saskatchewan Avenue West utility project that we've been discussing. So just a recap of the resources available, obviously there's the website link for people can use, and we do have again that tax impact calculator, a link to your property assessment, and various links for Manitoba education tax changes. So. And that does conclude my presentation as it relates to the public hearing and the financial plan, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Buds. Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing, for or against? And Luann, your name, please, for the record.
Luann Anderson.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I noticed that in the handout that was prepared for this evening, of course, one of my questions was going to be about accessibility. So it's noted that City Hall accessibility improvements, it's showing an allocation of $297,000. Last year, I was advised that the study had been completed, but it hadn't been presented to council yet. Has that study been presented to council and accepted by council? And if so, what are this allocation going to be utilized for accessibility?
Mr. Pito?
Through your worship to the presenter, the study was presented to council in open session and discussed the multiple options available to council to pursue. That was incorporated for this budget. The options we're looking at is for direct access to the main floor via ramp. And we're also considering upgrades to the front desk to allow more accessibility needs. And then there's also consideration for an elevator from the main floor to the secondary floor for access for council meetings. Those are all options in the engineering study, and council has set aside $297,000. We don't believe we'll be doing all of those improvements in 2021. There has been a significant amount of funding announced by the province to partner with municipalities to facility upgrades in 2022. However, we do intend to pursue improvements to the physical building, most notably access to the main floor in 2021 after having that discussion with council.
So if I'm interpreting what you're saying, priority would be access to the main floor for 2021 and looking at some sort of access to the second floor in 2022?
Through your worship, the presenter, that's correct.
Thank you. My second question relates to, last year it was mentioned that an amount of 50,000 was going to be used for a transportation study if a matching federal amount of 50,000 could be found. Has that happened, and is there, I see in the notation for planning for the green future, it says transit feasibility study. So that's going to happen in 2021?
Through your worship to the presenter, we were successful in achieving that matching federal funding. That's incorporated in the budget. We've actually gone forward and put out the RFP for that study and have selected the proponent, and we expect to have the results of that study within 3 to 4 months.
So what was the value of the study?
It was approximately $80,000 to $90,000.
Okay, so again, to clarify, once you get the results of that study, then some decisions will be made about going forward with some aspects of public transportation?
When we receive the results of the study, it will be presented to council, and any actions council want to take with that study would have to be incorporated in future budgets.
Okay. Just quickly going back to the accessibility study, I had gone through most of, because council meetings, you know, the public couldn't attend, I'd gone through most of the meeting minutes, reports, and done a search function on the city website, and I couldn't find the accessibility study. Has it been posted somewhere on the website?
Through your worship, the presenter, if it hasn't been posted in any form, I will make sure that it is.
Thank you. Third question, in 2020, the city's allocation for PRED was 150,000. For 2021, it shows in the budget the allocation is 119,000. Given that PRED has hired a second employee, I'm wondering what was the reason for the reduction in funding for PRED?
Through
The reduction in the budgeted request from all of the parties that the city funds, be it the planning district PRED, is at the discretion of the individual board. And that board recommended the budget put forward, and council did approve that funding. So that is the number that came to council for PRED. And we have the chair of PRED here with us, if you'd like to answer that as well, or comment on it.
Thank you, Councillor Buds, and through your worship. Yeah, basically, and as well, the funding agreement has changed a little bit. It's gone 65% city, 35% rural. So that will have an effect on things as well. But I echo exactly what Councillor Buds said.
Okay. There's also a comment that was made through PRED about focusing more on tourism. And in the budget allocation, it's for the city portion, it shows as 1,950. In the past, PRED has used some of the regular budget for a larger allocation, but then also at times the city has allocated additional money. Is there, I couldn't determine or ascertain in the budget, is there any additional funds somewhere in the budget for tourism, or is that the amount the city is allocating?
The allocation to PRED, obviously, we're going to have a presentation from PRED later on today in our council meeting to talk about the strategic objectives. There are sprinklings of tourism through PRED, and obviously when we, as a city, we are funding projects that would technically qualify under tourism as well. But looking for a specific line item, Nathan, do you have a comment on that specifically in terms of additional funding that we would earmark specifically for tourism?
Through your worship to Councillor Buds, I wouldn't have an exact figure.
Okay, thank you. I note that one of the capital projects identified for 2021 is 300,000 for lift stations at 2 locations, if I'm interpreting the line item. Once that's done, how many lift stations will be left without backup generators, or will that mean that all lift stations are now covered?
Through your worship, the presenter, we will have 2 locations with permanent located affixed generators. The remainder will not. All stations have been equipped to be hooked up to a mobile generator in case of emergency, but the 2 stations were prioritized because they are the biggest and have the biggest impact on our overall network.
Right. And I know sometimes it's hard to plan for the ultimate catastrophe, but that did happen in October of 2019. And that was why there was sewer backup in a number of homes in the community. So just again, to make sure I'm understanding, with the 2 permanent backup generators and mobile, should a storm like that happen again, would that cover all the lift stations, or would it just cover portion?
Through your worship, the presenter, the 2 stations that are now being affixed with permanent generators would have a significant effect on our ability to manage that type of situation. Coupled with our mobile generator and vacuum trucks, we would be in a much better situation than we were previously.
Okay. My last question relates to the community grant listing, and it's more of a curiosity. Last year, for previous years up to last year, there's a line item in the budget for the library, and then there was a second portion in the community grants. Last year, there was nothing mentioned for the library in the community grants, so I raised that as a question. Council indicated that no, the amounts were the same, it was just elsewhere. I noticed it's back in the community grants this year. What is the rationale, and the portion that's in the community grants, how is that money utilized versus the portion that's in the budget?
Through your worship to the presenter, I appreciate that sometimes things are categorized differently, but I think the important thing to take away is that the library funding has remained stable over those periods. How it's labeled in the budget, we'll take note to try and be more consistent, but the library funding has remained consistent.
So the portion that shows as a community grant, how is that portion utilized? Like, I raised the question last year about for example, the Gillespie Center, the 20,000, which is for operating, but the indication from council is that is still something that Gillespie can, or now Prairie Fusion, can have some say in. So with the library, is it just does that money is listed currently as a community grant, but it really is more operating? That's my question.
Through your worship, the presenter, I think I understand your question. The $20,000 with the Gillespie is a contribution to a capital reserve for the facility. The request for funding from the library is for an operational grant.
Okay.
So if money was generated separately to contribute to the reserve for the library, of which we have one, those are for capital improvements, and that's how that money's divided.
Okay, so both this portion under community grants and in the budget is for operational.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you. That ends my questions.
Is there anyone else here to speak to the hearing? Okay, need a motion to close the hearing?
Thank you, Worship. I move that the 2021 financial plan and tax levy bylaw 21870 for the public hearing now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay. Now I'm just waiting for it to load on my computer here.
You need a
Okay.
hand with your computer, Councillor Buds?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Worship. City Council approved the 2021 budget for the City of Portage la Prairie on January 25th, and the tax bylaw is comprised of that budget in the financial plan and sets the mill rates needed to raise the necessary tax dollars. The 10-year capital plan and debt management plan are also part of the financial plan. As I mentioned in my presentation, the 2021 budget estimates on approximately $12.2 million in property taxes to meet all the expenditures not covered by other revenues, and the city remains committed to investing in our city to improve and enhance our infrastructure to meet the needs of all of our citizens. So this plan did include a spending of $9.6 million in our general fund and $31.6 million for capital utility projects, including the year's capital expense for the massive water pollution control facility plant upgrade. Excuse me. This project will not be fully completed until 2025 and is primarily funded by the government grants. The city has been able to maintain 2021 property taxes at no increase by funding increased expenses from our expanding tax base, as I mentioned. And the school division and provincial education support levy decreased slightly from 2021. And so I did talk previously about the Manitoba government, and I think that we can't stress that enough for citizens to understand the changes that are going to be impacting their tax bill. And it is all in relation to this change in the tax credit and the rebate that people will be getting. So I know there could be several questions, and we do have those links on our website available to answer those questions. I did have a presentation on the impact for a $250,000 assessed home, and again, I'll highlight that the property taxes on both those years for 2021 and 2020 remain the same, as well as for commercial property. So the tax payment deadline is Friday, July 30th, and there's a wide variety of choices for taxpayers to pay their taxes, as there always is. The city's debt management plan is incorporated into the enhanced 10-year capital plan, and details regarding this plan for future general and utility projects are identified in the 2021 financial plan presentation document. And based on the regulatory requirement that a municipality's debt cannot exceed 7% of its total property's proportioned assessment, and debt payments can't exceed 20% of its annual gross revenue, the maximum debt level for the city is $44 million, and annual debt payments can't exceed $4.3. And so with 2021 remaining and projected debt outstanding of $12.5 million and annual payments of $2.8 million, the city is well within its maximum requirements. And I think that's a question that does get asked of us sometimes, is with everything that's going on, what does the city's debt load looks like? And I think, we can reassure citizens that we are definitely in a favorable position. And in fact, there's going to be some instruments that start to get paid off. We are replacing them with continued investment in our city. So it is a recommendation of your committee, and I move that bylaw number 21-8720, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to authorize the levying and raising of property taxes for school and municipal purposes for the year ending December 31st, 2021, be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for variation PC 19-21, the City of Portage la Prairie. This is for 1 McCain Avenue. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? Okay. Carly Friesen is available for any questions from council. Okay. Need a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Be it resolved, and I so move, that the public hearing for variation PC 1921 for the City of Portage la Prairie for 1 McCain Avenue now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, Council, in front of you have from the Planning and Economic Development Committee the request for variation for 1 McCain Avenue, which is classified as Lot 1, Block 1, Plan 1777 in the parish of Portage la Prairie. So the issue is to vary the site requirements. First of all, the minimum site requirement of 920 square meters to be reduced to 468.5. The front yard requirement of 15.2 to be reduced to 10.65. And then when on a corner lot, the east side yard requirement of 7.6 meters reduced to 3.01 meters. And the side width requirement of 30.5 meters to be reduced to 16.978 meters. And this is when it's in an M2 or a heavy industrial zone as per the conditions of subdivision number 4550-21-7989. So the background, as I just read, is the City of Portage la Prairie is in the process of buying the existing lift station and the small parcel of land it sits on. Variation was per the conditions of the subdivision previously of -4550-21-7989. So the application has been circulated to various city departments, and there's been no concerns. Public notices have been sent to all property owners within a 100-meter radius, and there's been no objections. So it's the administrative recommendation, and the ISO move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of the City of Portage la Prairie to vary the following: the minimum site area requirement of 920 square meters to 468.5 square meters. The front yard requirement of 15.2 meters to be reduced to 10.65 meters. When on a corner lot, east side yard requirement of 7.6 meters to be reduced to 3.01 meters. And the site width requirements of 30.5 meters reduced to 16.978 meters in an M2 heavy industrial zone as per the conditions of subdivision 4550-21-7989 at the property known as 1 McCain Avenue, which is legally described as Lot 1, Block 1, Plan 1777 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Counselor Meyer and seconded by Counselor Buds. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll open the public hearing for an excess animal permit. This is for 2021-02. This is for Askelty Tremba at 128 14th Street Northwest. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing? And your name for the record, ma'am?
Megan Trembath.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
I don't really have any comments. I was here for questions mainly. So yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Could council have any questions? Okay, none so far.
Okay, good.
Need a motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, I have letters.
Oh, sorry, letter for the record?
Yeah, I have 2 letters.
Okay.
There is a letter of support for the application from a neighbor, Valan Shermashnook. She lives at 36 14th Street Northwest, which is the house south of 28 14th Street Northwest. She said this family has recently moved in a month or 2 ago. They are requesting an excess animal permit. I have to admit that I knew they had dogs, but I have only heard them when we were both outside at the same time or when the dogs are playing with each other. I am actually not even sure how many dogs are at the residence. I would have thought only a couple, as they do not make a lot of noise. I have never seen them outside the fenced-in yard, nor have I heard them barking after 11 p.m. or before 7 a.m. Their fence, where the dogs run around, is right beside my bedroom window. Attached is a picture looking out my bedroom window right into their backyard. I don't have any complaints on this neighbor getting the excess animal permit. I believe they are responsible pet owners and should be given the excess animal permit for the address at 28 14th Street Northwest. From Valan Shermashnook. And the next one was a letter of objection from Marty Upward at 31 15th Street Northwest. She said, I have received your letter informing me of the owner of a residential property, 28 14th Street Northwest, applying for an excess animal permit to house up to 4 dogs. I understand there is to be a meeting on Monday, April 26th, regarding this matter to decide to grant or refuse this permit. This letter is to make known that I oppose the granting of this permit that wants to house up to 4 dogs on this residential property. I am a dog owner myself, and I have 1 dog that lives in my house with my family. I understand the responsibility and accountability needed to be a pet owner within a residential setting, with neighbors and other services like daycares and school within the area. Being a pet owner of a dog affects the neighborhood. I feel the safety of children and adults that live and move throughout this neighborhood are very important. Sometimes dogs get loose, sometimes dogs bark in a very intimidating way, sometimes dogs are dangerous, and sometimes dogs are not managed properly. 1 dog can be a threat depending on breed, size, and socialization. 4 dogs are 4 times this and would be much greater to manage, especially on a residential lot. Residents of the neighborhood want to feel safe when they go for a walk to school, go to the playground, etc. There are 2 daycares in this area and a school. Safety is a concern. Dogs do bark. They are not silent all of the time. A dog's bark may be music to the owner's ears, but not to the other residents of the neighborhood. 1 dog barking can even be annoying, but 4 dogs all barking together can be uncomfortable and very stressful to adults. Again, there are 2 daycares within the area. Dogs are usually up through the day and can cause disruption throughout the neighborhood. Again, it is important that the noise balance is maintained with respect to the residents of the neighborhood. 4 dogs just makes it that much more difficult to control. Owning a dog can affect the appearance of a residential property. Dogs do take up space, needing shelter and a bathroom area. They do not clean up after themselves. Some dogs stay inside and some are outside dogs. All of this is dependent on the owner. 1 dog is much more manageable than 4, and there is a lot less mess with 1 dog. Dogs have the right to be taken care of in a humane and healthy manner. A residential property is not a big enough area to house up to 4 dogs. Dogs need exercise and a place to run and go to the bathroom. 4 dogs need a lot of space to exercise, etc. 1 dog would be manageable, but 4 would be difficult. Just as not all dogs are the same, neither are their owners. There are degrees of accountable and responsible pet owners. A bylaw limiting the number of dogs per residential property was put in place for a reason, for both the owner and the non-dog owner, as residents of a neighborhood live closely beside each other. It was made for the protection of the residents, the good of the neighborhood, and the protection of the dog also. A dog is a privilege to have and to take care of. If an individual wants to raise more than 1 dog or to breed dogs, etc., they should live outside of the residential area with a certain amount of space for this enterprise. Thank you for your consideration of my concerns and my opposition of this permit. Marty Cool Upward. That is all.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Oh, Councillor Draycott?
Sorry, Your Worship, it took me a moment to gather my thoughts. Are you okay if I ask a question still? Thank you. Hi, thanks for coming this evening. We really appreciate when people come to this type of hearing so that we can ask you questions if they arise.
Thank you. I'm new to Portage, so.
That was actually my question, one of my questions. Val-Anne had said that you had recently moved in.
Yes.
So you are new to Portage, just
Yes.
moved in a couple of months ago?
Yes.
And so obviously you came with your 4 dogs into our community?
Yes, and my boyfriend had a dog, so they're included in that, so yes.
Perfect. So that was one of my questions, if you had already existed in our community with 4 dogs or if you had recently moved in. Your backyard, I can see from Val-Anne's picture that you have at least a partial fence. Is your backyard fully fenced?
Fully fenced.
And it does say that you're putting a dog run in as well? Is that already in
Yes, between us
existence?
and the neighbor. But it's not a dog run to keep dogs in 24 hours a day. We are outside with our dogs only, and when we are not outside with them, they are in the house with us.
That's good information to know as well. And I guess in the letter, there was a roundabout statement about breeding. Are you currently breeding your dogs?
I am a CKC registered breeder, yes.
Oh, well, that is excellent to note as well. All right. I think that that is all the questions I have at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from council? Okay, need a motion to close the public hearing?
Yes, Your Worship. Be it resolved that public hearing for excess animal permit 2021-02 Asselstein Trembla at 128 14th Street Northwest now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
The issue is whether or not to grant Ms. Trembla and Mr. Asselstein an excess animal permit, which will allow them to house up to 4 dogs at the residence at 28 14th Street Northwest, Portage la Prairie. The alternatives are to issue a permit, as stated in the application, or to not issue a permit. Animal Control Bylaw 16-8647, Section 17, Article 5 states that no person shall own, harbor, keep, or have in his or her possession or control on his or her premises more than 3 dogs or 3 cats or a combination of both over the age of 6 months without obtaining an excess animal permit. The applicants have applied to be allowed to keep 4 dogs at their residence. Letters were mailed March 30th, 2021 by regular mail to neighboring property owners within a 100-meter radius of the property. The applicants and property owners were notified that by time registered mail of the hearing date. They were advised the hearing is scheduled for 6 p.m. on Monday, April 26, 2021, and all neighboring property owners have the opportunity to provide City Council with their views in writing prior to the hearing date, or to make arrangements to appear and voice their opinion at the hearing on the proposed application. Animal Control Officer Keith Hutlett conducted a site inspection of the property at 28 14th Street on March 29th, 2021. He stated the property was a 1-story home with a basement and fenced yard. He stated the house was very clean and each animal had their own kennel as well as food and water dishes. He advised the owners had plans to build an outside run for the dogs, and he recommended approval of the permit. The recommendation is, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the excess animal permit application of Mr. Megan Trembla and Mr. Jason Asselstein for the 4 dogs currently owned at the property known as 28 14th Street Northwest. Further, that these 4 dogs not be added to or replaced until the number is reduced to the number allowable by the animal control bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Buds. Questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Draycott?
Thank you, Worship. Just for clarification, yay for having a CKC registered breeder. If you're going to breed your dogs, I always have the opinion that being a registered breeder is a positive step to take. As we're looking to approve 4 dogs, but obviously there will be puppies. If that is a consideration, is there extra consideration that needs to be taken or extra steps by us if we are looking at a breeding situation?
Mr. Pato?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Draycott. If someone were to breed dogs and had puppies, the puppies would not count as dogs against the number until they exceeded the age of 6 months, and then they would count as an additional animal in the household. So if the animals, the puppies, had left the home before 6 months, they would be allowed.
Thank you for the clarification. And again, it does state on the recommendation that these 4 dogs would be the ones that we are voting on this evening. So in the possibility of one of the dogs leaving the premise, then what would be the situation in adding an additional dog to replace the 4th dog?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Draycott, I believe as the motion is worded, if they have 4 dogs and a dog was left the house, then that would be the new limit, and they would have to apply again to get another exceedance of the bylaw.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Wall?
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that seeing as how these dogs were as part of this family when they moved here, I think it would be rather onerous to ask them to get rid of one prematurely, and I'd be prepared to wait until one was sold or left by some other means.
Can I address that? I do have a young dog that I have found a new owner for. My plan for her was to become a show dog or a breeding dog, but she didn't turn out the way I'd hoped. She's a very sweet dog. She's almost 2. I will be spaying her and sending her off onto her new home coming up in June.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, is that included in the 4? So in June, the numbers go down to 3, or?
Yes, but the plan is to possibly keep 1 or 2 of the puppies past 6 months. But this is the way the business of breeding registered dogs go. You kind of wait and see what they look like as they get to be adults.
Okay. Further questions or comments from council?
No, I just want to comment that as Mr. Pito stated, those puppies won't be considered dogs until they're 6 months or older. So that's not an issue today.
Okay, final calls for questions. All those in favor of the motion? And the motion is carried. We're going to move into committee. First up is Finance, Legislative and Property Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Worship. I have nothing at this time, but a couple items under new business.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and as usual, it's always my pleasure to briefly discuss the building reports, and as usual, Council, the reports are there for your reference. And as usual as well, we look at it from a regional or a combined perspective. So I draw your attention to the March 2021 building report combined. When you compare it to last year, in brief, you're going to see that the significantly reduced values from where it was last year, which is understandable based on most of the projects and the major projects have been completed. The promising side is you're going to see that the actual permits are up and indicates that we're maybe back to a bit more of an average valuation for the permits that are there. So still exciting news. We're still $8 million for the year to date, which is significant, and you'll see that hopefully continue through the rest of the year. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meyer.
And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening we do have the City of Portage la Prairie Green Space initiatives in order to vote on. So our options this evening are to approve the support of the National 2022 Year of the Garden Initiative or to deny this support for this initiative. I did run fully through the analysis during my committee meeting last time we met. But just a brief synopsis, we are looking at carrying over the 2020 Manitoba 150 birthday celebrations. So that was $20,000 grant funding for that initiative. Purchasing banners for the Saskatchewan Avenue downtown area and floral displays along the island for the windmill, benches and planters downtown on the sidewalk replacement this year as well. Communities in Bloom, that is continuing on this year so far. So just a continued participation in that program. Nationally, the Communities in Bloom organizations promoting Gardens of Hope for the summer of 2021. So residents interested in participating in that initiative can find further information and register at hopeisgrowing.ca. And flowers, shrubs, vegetables, and seeds that produce yellow flowers or foliage is what they're looking for this year. As well, the National Year of the Garden, the Canadian Garden Council is requesting that cities, towns, interested organizations provide letter of support to the federal government through their local elected officials to declare 2022 the Year of the Garden throughout Canada. This is seen as a further initiative and support for our country emerging from a pandemic and to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Canada's horticulture sector. And further information is there as well in a link. In general, gardening's increased in popularity in many search for ways to improve their quality of life within the pandemic safety measures. For our city, encouraging green space beautification is beneficial to our residents and to tourism. Therefore, it is the recommendation that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie support the National 2022 Year of the Garden and issue a letter of support for this initiative. And I so move.
Moved by Councillor Draycott and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Wall, please.
I have nothing to report at this time.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Espy, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Public Safety Committee, tonight Councillor Wall for Councillor Knox.
The 2021 first quarter reports are available from Bylaw Enforcement, RCMP, and a detailed first quarter report from RCMP.
Councillor Wall, just before that, Public Safety Committee, the parking strategy update, and that was just for information from committee, I believe.
Yes, there is a report on the parking strategy update. I don't think there's been much of a change there. If anybody has any questions, I'm sure we have somebody from management here that can answer.
Okay. We have no deferred business this evening. However, we've got a number of items of new business. First up is quarterly reports. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And of course, the first quarter report for 2021 for PRED, which of course is short for the Portage Regional Economic Development. So with that said, I'm going to introduce our Economic Development Officer and our Executive Director for PRED, Eva Leary.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. It's lovely to be here in person and present the quarter one reports. Can everybody hear me okay? Feel a little small here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so quarter one for PRED has been a very productive quarter. We have expanded our team for this year, and we have moved forward with many of the KPIs in our organizational strategy. We're excited that, sorry, it's very hard to breathe in this. To date, we have done, out of 51 KPIs, we have currently 19 KPIs in progress and 11 KPIs that are currently completed. This means that in less than a year, we've completed 21% of our strategic plan, and 40% of that strategic plan is in progress. We're focusing on all 4 areas of our strategic plan and have seen some positive outcomes because of this plan. So to highlight some of the work that PRED has been focusing on over the last quarter, we've seen some very successful wins. We've continued to create an environment for success and have seen investment attraction queries flood into our office for 2021. We've developed a new section on our investment attraction package, focusing on the regional highlights and the regional approach and what success that has brought to our region. We are currently working with Invest in Canada on an awesome 360 virtual investment attraction project that will be released in quarter 2. This basically means that people can do site selection from a distance. We received $5,000 from Can Export Grant to focus on foreign direct investment and developing an economic baseline for the region, and that's going to help us focus on being more investment ready. This quarter, we've received $10,000 in marketing dollars from Travel Manitoba, and that's to promote the region of Portage la Prairie as one of Manitoba's premier destinations. We're also excited to say that we're in the final stages of our 5-year strategic plan for the Portage Regional Tourism Committee, which will be released in quarter 2. We continue to work on communicating with our business community and responding to requests for service. We worked with Business View magazine on a feature that will be released in May, a 9-page spread that will be released to over 840,000 subscribers in North America. We also participated in a Manitoba Spotlight series and promoted our region as a destination of choice at 3 separate global events to investment officers around the world in March. We continue efforts on developing policies and processes to ensure that PRED has strong governance and will be a long-standing organization in the community. We just finalized our 2020 financial statements for last year, and we continue to work with a variety of community organizations providing an economic development lens and to continue to be that quarterback for growing the region's economy. And that brings my report to a conclusion.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just want to kind of really reiterate some of the work that Eva's done. As we know, she is our economic arm for the city of Portage la Prairie and, of course, for the region, rural municipality of Portage la Prairie as well. It has been a busy 3 months, and I know that going forward, looks like it's going to be even busier. And I just want to reiterate that Portage is not only on the national stage, the provincial stage, but we're also on the international stage. And it's efforts like yours, Eve, and your staff, and of course the board and so on that have helped put that there. So thank you very much. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Services Committee, Councillor Draycott, first quarter 2021 reports.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a number of Community Services Committee reports this evening as well. I would invite Victoria Espy in if she could give us a review of PCRC and what has happened in the first quarter there.
Hello, just give me one moment. Pardon me? I volunteer to offer, or to wipe it down myself. Thanks. Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to go over really the highlight reel of our quarterly report. So first up, the Local Immigration Partnership Program just awarded a contract to a company called Urban Systems Planning based out of Winnipeg for the completion of a labor market needs assessment for Portage la Prairie. So this assessment will analyze trends, provide a comparison of other communities, assess skill sets that are needed within local businesses in the area, and provide recommendations on how to include newcomers, youth, and Indigenous people as a part of the solution for the labor market going forward. Our program called Dining In with a Chef just wrapped up thanks to Safe at Home Manitoba. 325 families were a part of this project in our community. And it also generated a lot of revenue for our local restaurants, approximately about $3,500 per restaurant per event. So it was really well received by our community. Coldest night of the year, that fundraiser is officially over, and it generated $59,000 for the shelter. Special thank you to Team Warm Hearts, who raised about half of that money themselves. The shelter also moved locations on March 31st, and several community businesses stepped up to help support that move, and it actually cost us $0. The Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition secured $233,000, which we granted out to various community organizations who were directly supporting urban Indigenous clients. One thing that is not in this report that I do want to touch on this evening is, sorry, I'm taller than Eve. PCRC, and in partnership with the Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition, will be hosting an urban Indigenous vaccine clinic. This will be a Pfizer clinic opening on May the 4th, running 2 days a week for several weeks. Eligibility is currently following provincial eligibility, with potentially more information coming this week. This excludes those who are experiencing homelessness or those who are precariously housed, as we are able to vaccinate anybody who is 18 plus who fit within those provisions. This clinic is targeting the Indigenous population of Portage la Prairie, where we will provide a culturally safe space for vaccination. We will be booking at an 80-20 ratio, with 80% being pre-booked appointments with 20% walk-in availability, which will be specifically for those who are homeless or precariously housed. We will be starting with approximately 135 doses per day. Only 27 of those will be walk-in. We strongly discourage anybody who has the ability to make an appointment to walk in, as again, these are targeted towards our most vulnerable citizens. But we are very excited to be able to offer this opportunity to our community, and look forward to being a part of the vaccine campaign moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report. Were there any questions for Ms. Espy before she leaves this evening? Nope. Then thank you very much. Next, I would invite our youth member of council, Jacinda Houle, to give us her quarterly report as well.
Good evening. Okay, so activities that I've completed this quarter: I attended city council meetings and the online council meetings. I also started a new job at PCRC as the Indigenous Community Coordinator Assistant, and I attended a Carriers of Hope virtual youth conference put on by the Assembly of First Nations. I helped Michelle and Berard do a virtual powwow dance class / demonstration, and I've been working on the Urban Indigenous Fresh Food / Clean Supply Hampers, and that's been keeping me busy. And I finally, just this week, we're finally wrapping it up, And I also got voted by the PCI graduating class as this year's valedictorian. Activities begun this quarter. I started working with Cornell Paget and helping him out with his Portage Urban Indigenous Peoples Coalition. I've also been maintaining a Facebook and Instagram page for the coalition. I became a youth board member for Rock Central, and I started working on the Urban Indigenous fresh food hamper and / cleaning supply hamper. And I just recently been having discussions with Cornell and Jill Fast about getting together an Indigenous youth leadership group, and we're planning on hopefully having an event with the youth group and city council if restrictions lower. And goals for next quarter is to find interest for the Indigenous youth leadership group and getting it together, and then hopefully getting together the youth group and to plan an event that involves city council and the youth group combined. And that is all I have to report.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your report this evening as well. And then we do have quarterly reports from the Heritage Committee, the Parks Committee, and the Public Art Committee. Just noted in the reports, Heritage Committee has been unable to have any formal meetings taking place, but they still have projects ongoing that are within the report that have been continuing on. The Parks Committee is just hoping to wrap up or looking to wrap up the water feature that has gone into Simplot Central Park. That's the McCain Interactive Fountain. We're just looking to complete artistic features on that and looking forward to that hopefully turning on later on this spring. As well, this Parks Committee is continuing to fundraise for the proposed skate park and release an RFP for the planning phase of the proposed skate park as well. And then under Public Art Committee, they did note that there was continued conversation with the Parks Committee in regards to the art project at Simplot Central Park at the water feature. Activities that they began this quarter was the committee had spoken to Cobalt Industries about potential for one of their projects. It was deemed unfeasible based on the budget provided, but they do continue on with next quarter. The committee will attempt to meet to redesignate funds from the old beautification fund. So ongoing work for all three of those committees as well. And that's all I have for community services reports, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. And Waterworks Committee, first quarter 2021 reports. Councillor Wall, please.
Yes, Your Worship. This report covers the water treatment plant, the water pollution control facility, and the Waterworks Division. The first quarter production daily average at the water plant was decreased compared to last year at the same time due to COVID-19 and the decreased need for product in the community. New air compressor and dryer were installed in the first part of January. The active flow treatment process is back online. A flow straightener for the new flow meter in the water treatment plant reservoir was installed in January, and the erratic readings from the flow meter have been corrected. Installation of the new generators were completed and commissioned in early March. And phase 3, the functional design by Stantec is ongoing, and completion of the design is scheduled for mid-spring 2021. Water pollution control facility in the first quarter had what you would call a perfect quarter with 100% compliance with the environment license. Tenders have been awarded to purchase new SBR recirc pumps, lift station pump, and 2 generators for Broadway and 6th Avenue lift stations. The wastewater upgrade project is ongoing, and administration is working to complete the final request for proposals and project agreement documents that will be issued to the shortlisted bidders in May. The Waterworks Division had a sewer break in January, 6 water main breaks, 1 curb stop replacement, 1 fire hydrant lead, a valve replaced at Broadway lift station, and a valve at 22nd Street on the Joel and Force main. Other work included 2 force main valve replacements, sewer main cleaning and maintenance done as required, and staff assisted other work with other facilities needed. The City and Manitoba Water Services Board have partnered to complete a condition and capacity study of the water and sewer services with the commercial and industrial park areas. This contract was awarded to AECOM with work to begin early May and completion in September. And that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. Next, I have new business, the Public Safety Committee first quarter 2021 reports, and that's also Councillor Wall.
Yes, Your Worship. I think I saw somebody in the hallway with a paper in his hand that would like to come in and give us a report on the bylaw committee.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. So first quarter 2021 has been busy for bylaw. Auto chalk is now fully operational in the streets and the parking lots. We did lose one bylaw officer, but just to maternity leave. We'll see her back in a year and a bit. Just quick stats. We dealt with 65 bylaw complaints in the first quarter and 107 animal complaints, totaling 76 animals impounded, returned to owners, returned to shelters, or our local paws. Auto chalk has generated $10,000 in revenue for the first quarter. Written tickets, which included animal control violations and bylaw, was $14,000, totaling $25,000 in revenue from fines. And then another part of our duties really took off in the new year here, which was related to the COVID-19 enforcement. We've put in 202 hours for complaint-based issues that have come from general public, the RCMP, or the command center in Winnipeg. And we've issued a total of $21,000 in fines for that. 82 complaints generated the $21,000. We also have been doing proactive inspections to help out the local businesses in the community, going out answering any questions. Big one was restaurants, churches. 55 inspections were conducted over that first quarter, and no violations were observed during those proactive inspections. So the community is working with us. That's my report. I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding it or wanting some more explanation.
Any questions from council? I had a question for you, Kyle. So general animal complaints, 715.8, what kinds of things fall under general complaints?
You're talking about the 30 general animal complaints?
Yeah, a total of 30 over the first quarter.
That could be anything from animals defecating. It's more or less, it sums up if we don't impound the animal, if we don't actually get there and there is an animal, we'll give it the broad spectrum of just a general animal complaint. A lot of it is animal defecating in public, or there's a pile, springtime has come, so we're getting a lot more calls with that too, with people's yards are a little dirty. So
okay.
There's no real specific thing that we use to sum up a general complaint.
Okay. The other question I had for you, had a few calls from people who've been from Republic Park talking about dogs being off leash. That's an on leash area in the city?
It's on leash, yes.
Okay. So does bylaw patrol Republic Park?
We do, and then when we receive the complaint, we've headed out there as well. Usually 5-10 minutes we're on site.
Okay.
We've experienced actually 0 dogs off leash when we've gotten there. I'm not saying it's not happening, because I know it's happening. You can see with the animal droppings everywhere. But we've not been able to catch anybody out there.
Okay.
As it gets warmer and animals are getting out, We're going to come up with a plan here within the department and see if we can start catching or at least enforcing some of it out there, at least educating the public on they can't be out there with their dogs. So.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. Any? Oh, sorry, Councillor Draycott.
That's all right. Thank you. Just in regards to bylaw complaints, I was wondering, are you proactively looking at properties that fit along that unsightly property, grass and weeds, or miscellaneous complaints, or are you currently on a per complaint basis?
As it's thawing, we have been more complaint-based, or sorry, proactive-based. There is a lot of proactive work that we're doing. It's the unsightly properties is the big one where the guys will go out and tour the back lanes or go up and down the streets, and they'll just catch properties that are a mess. Those are 50-50 proactive to complaint-based. Our tickets, our fines on the streets are turning into more complaint-based. We're getting away from getting out there and ticketing vehicles. So, yeah, the unsightly properties are definitely 50-50, but our tickets are kind of lacking in that area.
And Councillor Wall?
Yes, I was just wondering about your experience with enforcing the health regulations for the province during the pandemic.
In total, or like more specifically, or?
Yeah, is it something that's happening frequently, or is it
It's
not?
a daily thing. We're getting 2 to 3 complaints a day, whether it's a mask issue. We've been asked by the province to not respond to home gatherings, just because the RCMP have more training and tools used to deal with something like that if there was confrontation. We're getting a lot of the mask complaints, too many people in a store. We're going out and dealing with that, and yeah, it's a regular occurrence, and that's a 24-hour-a-day thing. My phone rings throughout the night for gatherings, which I pass on to the RCMP. Mask issues are your operating hours for stores.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions?
Your Worship, if I could just make a comment, I'd like to thank Kyle and his staff for pivoting to some of the COVID compliance enforcement measures. That was something that was asked to us by the province to help with, and we asked our bylaw contractor to assist. His staff went through the appropriate training with the province and have been very proactive in being good partners with the province to enforce public health orders. So just wanted to publicly acknowledge Kyle and his staff's work in that area.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Thank you.
We've talked before, Nathan. It's hard to get the support sometimes from the public on stuff like that. So it's really appreciated from myself and my staff when we hear stuff like that from council. Thank you.
Councillor Draycott? No further, okay.
Thank you, Kyle. And now I'd like to call on Inspector Jared St. Pierre for the RCMP report.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors. I left some calendars that we had designed. They're based on the RCMP fiscal year. So it starts in April, but a few Portage RCMP members in there and members from across the Western Manitoba district. Some fun pictures and stuff for your calendars if you choose to take some. I did sanitize my hands before I grabbed them out of the box and before coming in here again too. So, has everyone had a chance to review the quarterly report? So our quarterly report last year, when we were determining our targets and measures, was at the onset of COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdowns. So it was really hard to anticipate what measures would be appropriate. And in some cases, it was a guessing game, just to make sure, because nobody knew how long the lockdown would last. And in some cases, we tried to predict, you know, if per quarter it came back, what would that look like, right? Some numbers we actually kept the same. So in those cases, we were a bit lower. Some of the ones that matter to the city here at Portage is the offender management program. So we set a target about 10 higher than last year at 360, and we achieved 496 offender management checks. That doesn't count the breaches and stuff, but that's just showing up at their door and knocking and making sure they're being compliant with the conditions that they've been released on. So those, that's an example of our officers being out there and trying to make a difference in the dent of property crimes and retail crimes and crimes against people and whatnot. Another initiative we took on behalf of the city this year was the foot patrols. So that was making concerted efforts to both patrol during the day and at night in the business corridors in attempts to dissuade ne'er-do-wells from causing crime in those areas. And we set up a target for the warmer months. In the winter months, it's a little harder, plus with the lockdowns, it was challenging as well. Everyone was staying home. So we set up a target of 100, and we hit 114 foot patrols for the area. Media obviously was a difficult one, in community events. There weren't a lot of them, so we didn't meet our goals there. But our school liaison, we have 2 really good school liaisons that have worked this year. And our target was 250 presentations, not knowing when the schools would reopen and whatnot, and interactions with school staff, and we ended up with 1,416. So we put the right people in that position, and they were very proactive on that. For resources, as of this moment, we're sitting at 100% on the city side. So things are good right now. Subject to any questions you may have, that's my submission.
I had a couple of questions, Inspector. So we're still getting calls from members of the business community, not complaints about policing, but complaints about where an offender is apprehended, they're charged by the police, sometimes they're apprehended by the shop owner. They go to court, and in one case, the next day, the offender's back looking in the window at the shop owner. So the work you're doing on offender management is much appreciated. I've recently had discussions with the Minister of Justice, and there's going to be some more discussions. Can you shed any light, or your impression, or the police impression about what happens to offenders when they go to court?
I would be speculating fully, but there is a mandate to protect the jails from infection. And so my understanding is that they've reduced the amount of potential inmates in order to protect the general populations of that during this dynamic. However, having said that, we're seeing a lot of the continuance of pre-COVID, right? And these are discussions you and I have had with the previous Attorney General, and to try and get everybody on the same page. Our officers at times can be equally frustrated. COVID has created a lot of new challenges for them in dealing with both the courts and the remand center. And it's not just our detachment, it's everywhere. We've had officers that are stuck at the remand center for 13 hours waiting to bring somebody in. So these are some of the challenges that we're seeing as a result of COVID and only having one place where we can bring prisoners in. As far as the courts, we have regular communication with the Senior Crown here in Portage to make sure that we're equally accountable to each other, and we collaborate on issues to make sure that our prolific offenders are dealt with as smooth as possible and as consistently as possible. However, because of the mandates above our pay grade and our decision making, we're limited in some capacity there too. We also engage with the federal crown on a more limited basis with regards to the federal matters such as drugs, right? And so we have a good relationship with both of the crowns. It's just dealing with the mandates that are passed down to them.
Okay. Well, I could tell you, I've heard from many in the business community, the foot patrols are much appreciated, especially in the warmer months. So I would really encourage your department to keep that up.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay.
Thank you, Inspector.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
That concludes my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Wall. The next item, new business, municipal services agreement with Long Plain First Nation, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Worship. And our alternatives are obviously to approve, to not approve, or to amend and approve. And so just some background here, Long Plain First Nation, the City of Portage, have had a municipal services agreement on the land known as Kishkimakwa since 2005. Kishkimakwa, designated as urban reserve, is situated at the far western edge of the city along Crescent Road. I think everyone's familiar where that location is. And just as a reminder again, MSAs seek to provide services such as fire protection, rescue services, water, wastewater, and additional services to the land under Crown authority. And these services are provided for an agreed upon fee structure between the municipality and a First Nation. And that fee structure is different than property within the city limits, where property, land, and structures are assessed at market values, then taxed accordingly. And so this MSA structure reflects the city does not provide Kishkimakwa with the following services. So again, these are not included in the MSA, and that is policing services, street maintenance, maintaining and installing water and wastewater infrastructure, bylaw services, garbage and recycling services. And just some changes to the previous MSA. Property will no longer be assessed at market values annually. Commercial and residential units will be assessed a flat fee per unit or building, and these fees will increase annually with a CPI during the term of the agreement. New properties have been added to the agreement, including the micro hotel, cannabis retail location, single-family homes, duplexes, and high-density housing complexes. And provisions allow for this agreement to apply to future expansions of the urban reserve with mutual consent. Additional services have been added to the agreement regarding animal control, and Long Plain First Nation will seek to adopt city bylaws on Kishkimakwa regarding fire protection and animal control to ensure a consistent enforcement level. And we also were dealing with limits on water supply that have been added to the agreement. Additional capacity can be granted with city approval. So additionally, a one-time payment of $40,000 has been granted to compensate the city for lost additional revenue respecting new construction during the gap between agreements, and that's basically just a catch-up. So should City Council support this municipal services agreement, the new agreement will come into retroactively back to January 1st of this year and will continue on until December 31st of 2025. And it is a recommendation of your committee, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the municipal services agreement with Long Plain First Nation and authorize the mayor and city manager to sign the agreement on behalf of the City of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item of new business, municipal service delivery improvement program support, and this is city planning and economic development. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, in front of you, you've got, it's a provincial program, but the issue is to support and improve the applications of the Portage la Prairie Planning District and the Portage Regional Economic Development for the Municipal Service Delivery Improvement Program. So basically, the province of Manitoba has offered an opportunity to municipalities and their partner organizations to apply to the Municipal Service Delivery Improvement Program. This MSDIP is a program that allows organizations financial support to really complete a value for money service delivery reviews of their current programs and their services. So the councils of the RM of Portage la Prairie and the City of Portage la Prairie decided to offer to support the application of any of their joint entity organizations who wish to pursue a submission to this new program. So the two that we have before us today are the Planning District and PRED, which both have expressed interest in this program, and that applications must be supported by resolutions from both councils and submitted by April 30th, 2021. So we're going to put that resolution forward today. If the applications are approved, the entities would then work directly with a third-party consultant from a list of pre-qualified firms to manage a service delivery review. They'll analyze the effectiveness, efficiency, and economy of dollars spent on services or programs that have been identified by the entity. The entity will own the report of their analysis and is actionable, and there are just recommendations only. There is no obligation to act on any of the recommendations made in the report, but it would have to be posted publicly and then, of course, submitted to the Minister of Municipal Relations. They've allocated roughly $5 million for this whole thing, but there is the opportunity for municipality and other entities to apply in 2022 and 2023, but once the $5 million is gone, that will dictate the longevity of the program. So, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie support and approve the applications of the Portage la Prairie Planning District and Portage Regional Economic Development for the Municipal Service Delivery Improvement Program.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Buds. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. The next item of new business is the award tender for biosolids land application. This is Waterworks Committee. Councillor Wall, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The issue is to award the contract for the 2021 land application of biosolids from the Water Pollution Control Facility as per tender 21 OPS 014. The tender for the land application of biosolids for the Water Pollution Control Facility was posted on MERC's website as well as on the City of Portage la Prairie website on March 9th, 2021, with submissions due April 13th, 2021. This work involves the removal, transportation, and land application of approximately 900 dry tons of biosolids material from the biosolids storage tanks, the low-rate anaerobic reactor, and the bulk volume fermenter. 10 copies of the tender were requested and 2 bids were received. The bids were evaluated and scored according to qualifications and experience, sustainability factors, and price. Points were awarded as follows: Assiniboine Injection, 99 points, and WeSuck Incorporated, 80.5 points. The 2021 budget for land application of biosolids includes $400,000 for disposal of industrial pretreatment and secondary sludge. Assiniboine Injections has successfully performed this work for the City of Portage la Prairie for over 20 years. They are familiar with the facility, have a good rapport with local farmers, and are accommodating regarding schedule. The administrative recommendation, and I so move, that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the contract for land application of biosolids for the 2021 season to Assiniboine Injections Limited for a total contract price of $330,300 net of GST.
Moved by Councillor Wall and seconded by Councillor Draycott. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. The next item is an item of old business. This is utility boring bylaw 21-8716, and this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Worship. A couple of boring bylaws here, and this first one, 21-8716, was approved by the Municipal Board Order E21-032 on April the 6th, and now we require to give this thing second and third reading. Just as a reminder, this is a borrowing bylaw on the utility side of things to deal with the infrastructure required for Saskatchewan Avenue West, and amendments stipulated have been made so that the copy of the board order is provided and attached here. The first reading was given back on February 8th of 2021. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that bylaw 21-8716, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to authorize the borrowing of up to $6 million for the completion of Saskatchewan Avenue West utility infrastructure project, to be given second reading.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor? And that's carried.
And that bylaw 21-8716 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next item, old business, the general boring bylaw 21-8717. And again, this is Finance Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Worship. And again, this is very similar to our previous approval, except on another side of the equation. So the request for 2022 borrowing authority for Saskatchewan Avenue West general borrowing project, and this was to install the land drainage systems, update the paved road, install climate-friendly infrastructure, which includes walk areas, bike paths, and greenery, and appropriate parking spaces between 4th Street West and Elm Street. We did give that first reading back on February 8th as well. And we did receive municipal board approval on April the 6th, and the copy of that board order E21-033 is provided. And first reading and approval of the City of Portage la Prairie of Council bylaw occurred again back on February the 8th. So the total cost of this project is estimated to be $27 million, with grant funding from various levels of government levels up to $16.5 million through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP. We are projecting to get that. We are still waiting, and so too are many municipalities in the province of Manitoba waiting for this funding announcement. We do feel very confident on this, and we do feel we're going to get it, but technically we have not received that approval as of yet. Completion of this project is contingent on, again, successfully acquiring this grant funding, and is expected to commence in 2022 on Phase 2, and the previous bylaw dealt with Phase 1. So early procurement of debt financing approval was required by the city in the application funding for ICIP. So it is a recommendation of the committee, and I so move that bylaw 21-8717, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie, to authorize the borrowing of up to $10.5 million for the completion of Saskatchewan Avenue West General Borrowing Project be given second reading.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. Any questions on the motion? Councillor Wall? Okay, any further questions? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And then bylaw 21-8717 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Buds and seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. And that concludes our agenda for council. So council is adjourned at 7:45 p.m. We're going to move right into committee. Call committee to order at 7:45 p.m. First up is Finance Legislative Property Committee. Councillor Buds.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The City Planning and Economic Development Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Community Services Committee. Councillor Draycott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing for Community Services Committee this evening.
Thank you. And Councillor Wall, Waterworks Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Waterworks Committee has no report this evening.
Thank you. And Councillor Espy, Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Councillor Wall, for Councillor Knox, Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Public Safety Committee has no report at this time.
Thank you. So committee is adjourned at 7:46 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.